Glycerin soap is an easy way to make soap at home. You cut the base, melt it, add fragrance. Less natural than traditional cold-processed soaps. Many people do not realize that ready-made soap bases from stores are often color and decorations, and it is ready. They contain synthetic additives such as clarifiers, foam boosters, or preservatives. These improve appearance and stability, but they are not necessary for skincare. That is why I decided to make my own base. Now I will show you the process step by step. First, I measure out all the ingredients. I start with coconut oil and stearic acid. Coconut oil is a great choice because it creates a firm bar and gives the soap a nice, creamy lather. Stearic acid, which is naturally derived from plant oils like palm or coconut, adds extra hardness and stability, helping the soap base stay solid and resist melting. Now it's time for the glycerin. Vegetable glycerin keeps the soap moisturizing and gives it a smooth, skin-friendly finish. Alcohol plays an important role in creating a clear base. Using a pure, high-proof food-grade or cosmetic alcohol prevents cloudiness and helps all ingredients blend evenly. The next ingredient is the sugar and water mixture, which becomes a syrup once dissolved. This syrup helps improve the clarity of the soap and adds a bit of hardness, making the final bar less brittle. You can also use sorbitol instead of sugar. Sorbitol acts as a humectant, helping the soap stay more moisturizing and smooth, but it can also cause more sweating on the surface. You can already get the full recipe. The link is in the description. Now it's time to mix the ingredients. Dissolve the sugar in distilled water, heating it to around 70 degrees until it forms a clear syrup. When dissolving sugar in water, be careful not to overheat it. If the sugar gets too hot, it can start to caramelize, which may cause your base to turn yellow later. You can pour the alcohol into the glycerin and mix well. Finally, melt the coconut oil and stearic acid, preferably using a double boiler. Stir gently so the ingredients blend smoothly without burning. Temperature is very important when making melt and pour soap. I try to keep it around 70-80 degrees Celsius. A kitchen thermometer is very useful, ideally one with an alarm that notifies you if the temperature goes too high. If you have a slow cooker and want to use it for soap making, you can work at a lower temperature. This is a convenient option, especially for larger batches, as it helps maintain a stable temperature for a longer time and reduces the risk of burning the soap. In the meantime, you can prepare the lye solution. Lye helps control the pH and is necessary for some steps of soap making, even in small amounts for melt and pour soap. It ensures the soap stays stable and maintains the right texture. Safety is essential. Caustic soda is highly corrosive, so always wear protective gloves, safety glasses, and long sleeves. If I don't wear long sleeves in the video, don't follow that example. I'm doing it at my own risk. I personally also recommend a protective mask because the fumes can be very irritating. The room must be well ventilated, ideally with an open window, or you can even work outdoors. Add lye gradually to water, stirring after each portion. Never pour water into lye. Always add lye to water. Adding it too quickly can cause the container to crack due to temperature differences. My tip: I place the container with distilled water into an additional bowl filled with cold water, then slowly add the lye, stirring after each portion. Personally, I find this the best way to help the lye solution cool faster and reduce the risk of the container cracking. Of course, there are other methods too, but I'll talk about them another time. Stir until the lye is completely dissolved. Notice how much the temperature of the lye has changed. Imagine what would happen with a larger batch. In this case, you can see only a slight warming of the water, and the fumes are not very bothersome. I removed the container from the water bath and will start adding the lye to the oils. You can wait until both ingredients reach a similar temperature of 40-50 degrees Celsius. Personally, I don't wait and add it immediately. The mixture combines right away. Make sure to stir thoroughly so all ingredients are fully incorporated. Since we're working with a glycerin-based hot process, I don't wait for the oils and lye to cool. I add the warm lye directly to the warm oils, and it forms a thick, solid-looking mass right away. This is normal for this method and helps the base melt evenly and become smooth faster. Now we can place the container back in the water bath. It's time to add the glycerin and the alcohol. Make sure your mixture is around 70-80 degrees. Pour the alcohol slowly and in small portions, because adding it too quickly can cause the so-called volcano effect, a sudden foaming and rising of the mixture. If you're working with a larger batch, always add the alcohol in stages, stirring between each addition. Good to know. Glycerin can be added earlier or later in the process, depending on the method you prefer. Both approaches are correct. The only difference is how quickly the base becomes fully melted and transparent. Once everything is combined, cover the pot and let the mixture sit. Stir it occasionally. You'll notice the base becoming clearer and smoother as it melts down. I also use an immersion blender to help the mixture dissolve faster and to achieve a more uniform, transparent texture. From this point on, it's a good idea to keep an eye on the mixture. The reaction can speed up, and as the alcohol evaporates, the base may thicken or rise more quickly when stirred. You don't need to watch it constantly, but checking the texture and temperature from time to time helps keep everything under control. To speed up this stage, I'm using a hand blender. You can also do this a bit earlier in the process, even before adding the alcohol. Please remember to be very careful here. When blending, the mixture can splatter and cause burns, or suddenly bubble up like a small volcano. For that reason, I always remove the container from the heat before using the blender. Blending helps break down any remaining lumps and allows the base to become clear much faster. It makes a big difference, especially if the mixture has started to thicken unevenly. This is also a good moment to wear protective goggles and long sleeves, especially if you're working with a shallow container or making a larger batch. I know I keep repeating this, but when working with soap, safety always comes first. At this stage, the mixture is still very fluid, almost water-like, which means it can splash very easily and unexpectedly. Take your time, blend carefully, and always stay protected. After blending, I always check carefully to make sure there are no lumps left. At this stage, you can already start to see the mixture becoming clearer, especially at the bottom. Now I'm placing the container back on the heat, just to maintain the temperature and allow everything to fully dissolve. At this point, patience is key. We're letting the base melt gently and become completely transparent. At this point, I cover the pot with plastic wrap. This helps reduce evaporation and keeps moisture inside, which is very important for a transparent glycerin base. It also allows the heat to work more evenly without drying out the surface. After some time, I remove the pot from the heat. You'll notice a thin skin forming on the top. This is completely normal. Underneath it, the base is already clear and fully melted. We're very close, but the soap still needs a bit more time and gentle heat to dissolve completely and become uniform throughout. Before adding the sugar, I prepare a separate sugar water solution. I dissolve the sugar at around 70 degrees Celsius, making sure it is fully melted and completely clear. Before pouring it in, I double-check that the sugar is fully dissolved and that the temperature is correct. Then I slowly add the solution to the soap base and gently stir to combine. It's important not to overheat the sugar. If the temperature is too high, the sugar can start to caramelize, which may darken the base, affect clarity, and change the final texture of the soap. Once the sugar solution is added, everything should be mixed carefully. Later in the process, blending can help fully homogenize the base, but only when done with control. Using a hand blender too aggressively can introduce air bubbles into the soap. Trapped air reduces transparency and can create cloudiness, so blending should be done in short pulses, with the blender fully submerged. At this stage, patience and gentle handling are what lead to a clear, glass-like glycerin base. Just to clarify, using a hand blender at this stage is optional. You don't have to use it if you'd rather not. If you prefer a slower and safer approach, simply stir the base thoroughly after adding the sugar solution. Then cover the pot and allow it to dissolve gradually with gentle heat. I choose to blend because I don't like waiting, and it speeds the process up significantly. But the final result can be just as good without a blender. What matters most is giving the base enough time to fully dissolve, whether you speed it up or let it happen naturally. When the temperature is maintained, the base usually needs around 30 to 60 minutes to fully dissolve, depending on the batch size and heat stability. From start to finish, making a transparent glycerin base like this typically takes a few hours, including preparation, melting, and resting time. This isn't a fast process, but the clarity is worth the patience. In my case, the temperature has dropped slightly, so I'm going to increase the heat a bit to help the base dissolve more quickly. The goal is to warm it gently, not to rush it, so everything melts evenly without overheating. After about 15 to 20 minutes, the base is fully clear and ready to be poured into molds. This is a small batch, so I'm using simple soap molds. Nothing fancy at this stage. Once the soap has cooled and set, I'll show you how clear it turned out. At the beginning of this shot, you can see a thin skin forming on the surface while I'm stirring. The temperature has dropped slightly. This is completely normal, especially since I've just taken the container out of the hot water. Now I'm pouring one portion of the clear base into a mold. The remaining base will be gently colored and used for decorative elements in cold processed soap. This is the stage where you can safely add colorants or fragrance, as long as the base is fully clear and still fluid. Always add them gently, and mix carefully to avoid introducing air or cloudiness. Personally, I usually make slightly larger batches and leave the base uncolored and unscented. I pour everything into molds, cut it into blocks, and remelt only what I need later. In this case, I needed small decorative embeds for my holiday soaps, so I'm coloring just a portion of the base. One important detail I want to mention, even though it's not shown in the video, is that after pouring the soap into the molds, I lightly spray the surface with alcohol. This helps eliminate any surface bubbles and gives a smoother, cleaner finish. It's best to do this right after pouring, while the base is still hot and fluid. There's no need to overspray. A light mist is more than enough. And now, it's time to take a look at the final result and see how clear the base turned out. The soap usually takes about 30 to 60 minutes to set, depending on the mold size and room temperature. Once it has fully cooled and hardened, it can be unmolded safely. Here you can also see how the Christmas tree embeds turned out in cold processed soap. They hold their shape well and stay beautifully clear. Once everything is ready, I move on to packaging. Here you can see the same base, one left completely clear, and one gently tinted with a subtle shimmer. Used in moderation, mica or pearl pigments can add visual interest without compromising transparency. You can see a heat gun and a small heat sealing tool on the table. I use the heat gun to shrink the wrap evenly around the soap, and the heat sealer to trim and seal the film cleanly. This setup makes the process faster and more consistent, especially when packaging multiple bars. If you don't have this kind of equipment, that's completely fine. You can still use shrink wrap with a regular hairdryer on a high heat setting. It just takes a bit more time and patience. Another option is to store glycerin soap in airtight containers or sealed plastic bags, ideally with silica gel to help control moisture. The key is limiting contact with humid air as much as possible. Shrink wrap helps protect the soap from moisture in the air, which is very important because glycerin soap tends to sweat, particularly in humid climates. It also keeps the surface clean and preserves clarity for a much longer time. Living in the Netherlands, humidity is something I constantly have to deal with, so proper storage and packaging really matter here. Beyond packaging, there are a few other things I've noticed when it comes to glycerin soap sweating. If the base is left in the mold a bit longer, sometimes even for a few days, the sweating is often reduced later on. This happens because the surface has time to stabilize and slowly equalize with the surrounding humidity. If sweating does appear, it's usually temporary. You can gently wipe the droplets off, and once the soap dries, the surface often stays dry afterward. Because of these challenges, I've been working with different transparent soap base formulas. I do want to mention that I've also developed another transparent base recipe. This alternative formula uses more ingredients, but the results are significantly better. So far, during my tests, it hasn't sweated at all, even in humid conditions. And it's also much more gentle on dry skin. If that's something you'd be interested in, let me know in the comments. The recipe shown in this video is available in my online shop. You'll find the link in the description below. It comes with a detailed written explanation, step-by-step instructions, full ingredient data, and calculators. You'll receive the same recipe both as a PDF and an Excel file. If you have your own tested tips for reducing glycerin soap sweating, feel free to share them in the comments. I'd love to hear what works for you. To finish things off, I'd like to show you the final results of my limited holiday editions. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a thumbs up. It really helps the channel. If you have any feedback or suggestions, I'd love to hear them. This is my first full-length video, so I'm genuinely curious about your thoughts. Thanks again for being here, and I'll see you in the next one.